We will open now discussion about individual work and collective practice. With us are our guests from collectives and let's say individual artists. Margareta will introduce them and they will introduce themselves. I would like just to say that this the concept of the October Salon, which deals with politics of everyday life, is actually dealing in the first place with this connection and this shift between individual and collective. So what does it mean for us to work collectively, to make networks, to make social movements, to make feminist alliances and so on? So I will give the word to Margareta Kern.
So I'm a visual artist and I'm also taking part in the exhibition here. Since the last couple of years, a bit longer, I've also been working more and more collaboratively as an artist, but also I've been also working more actively within different collectives in London. So I'm based in London, I've been there for the last 20 years. I'm actually originally from former Yugoslavia, so I left in '92. But before I get into that, so my kind of main sort of space in which I work and which I inhabit, and the context I'm most familiar with is the neoliberal context of the British neoliberal context. So, and the collectives that I've been involved in. Well, one of them is the biggest one. It's kind of mostly actually really working on the cultural sphere, and it's really sort of a form of cultural activism and campaigning around and against exploitation in the cultural sector, particularly around free labour. But it kind of goes more deeper into thinking about what ideologies are at play that actually create this sort of systems and structures in which we either exploit each other or self-exploit or allow institutions to exploit us. I'm not saying the name of the collective because I like to stay anonymous within it, although that's also quite porous because the art world and the connections and friendships are formed and we know each other. How does this sort of shift when you actually start working as an artist, either in a collaborative mode or in a collective mode? What happens? What are things at play? What are things that you risk? What are things that start to become problematic? So, what is actually at stake? What is at stake politically, in terms of aesthetics? What is at stake in terms of your own kind of cultural capital, or all the other capitals that are created as you function within the kind of art sphere? What political, aesthetic, social, and I would add, and cultural and personal positions are at stake when working collectively in contemporary art today?
And we will show quite a lot of images because we are all visual artists in our group. So maybe the images will give you an idea of how the atmosphere is in our group or the different forms of work that we do together. Today, 16 members, 15 women and 1 man who is a feminist. We are international. We are mostly based in Berlin, but we have members in London. We have 3 in New York now. We have 1 in Vienna. And we are not calling ourselves a collective because not everything we do is done in a collective way. There is certain activities that only like 2 or 3 of us may do together. It can be anything from like more than 1. So this is why we are called the FF, because it's more than 1 F.
Our first so-called temporary autonomous zone in Vienna, this was last year, and there we already collaborated with other artists from Vienna especially, and we invited them to take part in a big program we organized. These are flyers we worked on. This is the masked ball we had in Vienna.
This year, for example, we did 2 processions, so-called processions, where we went with music through the streets and we celebrated something that had no specific cultural or religious meaning. We simply wanted to celebrate in the public. So the activities of our group range from, say, rather political demonstrations, critical discussions, but they also involve parties. In this picture you see our archive. This might be one thing that we have in common with Redmine. We try to build up a feminist archive, and ours is also a give and take archive. You can see here some posters, and we have some other items like these cups that the public can take out, they can have for free, but they should bring something. Yeah, they should bring catalogs or publications or whatever they feel is for them feminist. And they can also donate money if they want. We do collaborate artistically. We don't only organize discussions, but we go out of our own practices. We are all practicing artists, some of us since 25 years or more, who have been working either alone or in a duo. And all of a sudden we're in the situation that we collaborate with other women that maybe we don't even know for a long time because we like the idea of the other, yeah? And then we enter a process where you don't have a single author anymore. Sometimes you have 2, sometimes 5 authors. And the artworks are also, again, anything from like conceptual pieces to films to sculptures to even a collaborative painting. This collage here turned into painting in the end, in which about 15 people participated.
Because I work with another woman as 2 female duo artists, probably now for about 13 years. And I was kind of fascinated with the FF group in terms of its opaqueness of authorship, of object and idea in general. And from more or less actually an intellectual or maybe conceptual position with regard to one's own production, I think that's what was the seduction of entering the FF group for me. And the first time we entered it was to do a collaborative piece for the show that actually just showed the second erogenous zone, which was termed collaborative.
And these here are examples of events that happen during temporary autonomous zone, where we invite lots of other people.
Hello, I'm Guzde and come from Istanbul, and also take a part of this exhibition. And in Istanbul, between 2006 to 2013, I worked with a group that name is Atılkunst, and we are 3 women artists, and we work together. But we come from different disciplines, different styles, different backgrounds. And how we work with together, we just, around 2006, it's a daily practice. We just come together and we just had some discuss about what happened in Turkey, how is going, everything, and something like that. And one day we just stopped and produced some images about the agenda, what happened in Turkey, what is the political, social, and economical agenda. So we just talking on what is our agenda. Okay, we know what is the government's agenda in politics and daily, but we just check what is behind the big puntos from the newspapers. So we just try to focus on the media manipulations. This is one of the first stickers, from the first stickers. It's meaning democracy. We just produced a lot of stickers about on election time, and at the same time, we every week we started to produce some images every week on Saturday. And we send this image to our mail list and share it from our blog. We are free to produce some things and share from the internet, but at the same time we had some censorship because of from the government or local government. Sometimes in Turkey, our blog spots or MySpace or some websites censorship. So at the same time, some alternative medias. Also these days, usually governments try to block the alternative medias. Common meaning is public. So I think we produced it in 2010,
and it's around 2008 to 2010 also, because Istanbul, one of the European capitalist center, something like that. And at the same time, because of these capitalist things, all of the gentrification was started in Istanbul. And at the same time, sometimes we joined different exhibitions. So sometimes we produce some installations or some performances. But we usually focus on the agenda process and manipulations and something like that. Military symbols or tanks or monuments or soldiers. Or I only try to collect different figures and attach them on the clothes. So I can say I use the clothes as a stage, and I install some of the different figures on it. Each exhibitions and each projects we start to learn again and again, and we try to find a new way for our working system.
Hello, this is Greta Hoheisel. My name is Margareta. We are h.7 Außeneinsatz. And we are a collective for art education. This is maybe a big difference to the other collectives here. And we are normally 6 women spread all over Germany, and we do critical art education. The word or name h.7 Außeneinsatz means literally translated, it means foreign mission or outdoor missions. It's a good metaphor for what we do, because we are an independent collective coming into an institution, maybe like a task force, and this gives us the great opportunity to be critical, and even critical about the institution itself.
We studied together, so we know each other for a very long time, so we grew up together, let's say, and we decided then to work together as a collective. And what's important is that, like in the museum, there are always these hierarchical, or in a normal institution, let's say, there are these hierarchical settings, and what happens when we come there as a collective is that we always show already an alternative. And this is what we really like. So there is the institution with the director, curators, and whoever comes next. And then we are coming with a completely different structure. So art education, which is linked very closely to the institution, to the museum, often has a lot of responsibility and is very close to the sector of PR and marketing. So because or due to their connection to the audience, they have to generate more visitors, and of course they reproduce somehow the values of the institution. And then what comes out often are very pleasing formats, which are okay, totally, but often guided tours, like with an authorized speaker, of course, and then you have this hierarchical setting. We describe it as this, that you have the institution, at least which has the knowledge, and the public who needs the knowledge. And to work with different groups in the institution, to invite different groups to the institution, mostly students. The nice thing of working with students is that you will find in some German schools, not in all, but in some very mixed groups.
We will not talk too much and show you too much different things, but one strategy to break up this power relations is that we try to give space for the people to speak out and to make comments about the art, comments about the exhibition, what they feel like, or what connections they can make to their own realities. This is a project we did in Kunstwerke. It's a museum in Berlin, and it was a project with students, and then we have had this, after some days, we had this public performance. So mostly it's ending in public performances. And this is module is called Barometer. The students were collecting comments on the exhibition and on the building. One was speaking a sentence into a microphone, and the students reacted physically on it.
There are workshops for students, but then it's really hidden. So in a back room somewhere in the museum, and they are working, but it's not public and nobody knows about it. And we really try in the end of every workshop to have a public event and to invite the public, but also the people of the museums.
We also do something that is called the performative interventions, and that means that we are working in an exhibition, and we develop little performances that are based on the art that we find there, or the exhibition in general.
We're a group of 3 women artists, and we work together since 2001. And our practice is always collective, like not just inside our own collective, but we always collaborate with, or almost in all the projects, we collaborate with other people, sometimes artists, sometimes people from other fields like writers or theorists or students or children or mothers or activists. There are art spaces that we manage and created content for during these 12 years. There are also publications that we edited and created content for, and there are works is closely related to education, like workshops and working with students. And there are also interventions in the public sphere and in the fabric of the everyday life. What is connecting all of these different formats is our feminist perspective and also an anti-racist perspective, and also the fact that they are sometimes art, so they are part art, but they are part necessities, necessary gestures of the everyday. So we started working together around a physical space, and this is one of the first formats that I mentioned, like the spaces, exactly from a necessity of finding out how can we work together as artists that are women, that are coming from a really traditional and male-oriented art education, and how can we find ways of discussing and of working together that would take into account also the everyday and the body and the emotions and the failures and the flows of our practice. It's closely connected to our practice as teachers, and there are materials related to possibilities of doing an anti-racist education, not in the sense of the neoliberal multiculturalism, but in a more radical and meaningful way. So we always try to move between the modest work of actually doing something with your hands, like sewing, and the, let's say, intellectual work of conceptualizing. A project that we are working on now called Free Urban Gardens. And these are small gardens that we build in the neighborhoods of our city, Timișoara, using the technique of the permaculture, and taking into account the fact that the things that we take for granted, like the commons, the air and the ground. And
so it's called Friendship as a Model for Feminism. Our friendship was not from the beginning related to feminism, as our work as h.arta was not clearly defined by feminist ideas from its very beginning, although feminist ideas were always there as intuitions looking for the vocabulary that would give them shape. It happened that we graduated from the same art academy that we were profoundly disappointed with, and we were in the same situation of looking for a possibility to work as artists in an art context that at that point seemed very difficult to comprehend and enter. Our friendship started in the context of our profession. At the beginning, it was a friendship based on a shared mixture of feeling of inadequacy as fresh graduates with an obsolete and useless education, of enthusiasm and curiosity about art, and of a need to work collectively. Friendship is an inherent part of our lives, fulfilling needs of intimacy, trust, and communication, providing an everyday support in the practical contingencies of life, constituting a continual practice of negotiation in what concerns our ideas, our difficulties, our disagreements, our inherent hierarchies, ties private life with work and agency, emotions with politics. In this sense, we consider friendship as a useful model for feminism. a model that goes beyond private relations and becomes a way of political relating to others.